Welcome back to Sunday Vibes, one and all. We're still not back in the pub, but we are in sunny self-isolation right now, here to answer your burning questions, as ever, are Patrick Van Straten and Christopher Hamill. Let's crack straight on today. None of this small talk nonsense, because it's too hot, quite frankly. 26 degrees outside. So the first question was sent in by Oranges in the Morning, and they say, who will be the best free transfer this summer? So has anybody got any suggestions of players out of contract? Well, if contracts do still exist at this time, by the way, for people to sign. Pato, should we come to you first?
Sure. I actually think the pickings are pretty slim this summer. I'm not as excited by the players who are available for frees as the tabloids seem to be. I think most of them are a bit old and past it. But one guy who might potentially be worth a go is Mario Götze, coming out of Dortmund. He's still only 27, which is kind of surprising to me because it feels like he's had about 3 careers over the last few years. And I don't know, he's turning down deals with Dortmund. So he obviously suspects that he can get a better one elsewhere because Dortmund want him to take a 30% pay cut on his €7 million a year wages. So if he's turning that down, then I assume that his agent assumes he can get interest elsewhere. Then again, that isn't a huge amount of money. It shakes out to under £120,000 a week, which is not that crazy for somebody on a free contract. Plus, he's not really playing right now at Dortmund, so I don't know why he'd want to stay. I mean, obviously, you expect to be kept out the side by Torgan Hazard, by Julian Brandt, by Jadon Sancho, by Marco Reus. But Gio Reyna's been getting more minutes than him lately. Gio Reyna was meant to start Dortmund's game the other day, whereas Götze's last few appearances, it's 3 minutes here, 11 minutes there, another 3 minutes. It just doesn't really seem good enough. He's got 5 starts this season, and in that time, he's scored 3 goals. He's been really pretty decent. But he's not going to get a fair shake at Dortmund anymore. And if I were him, I'd think, even if I go to a mid-table Premier League club, I would probably get more money and I will definitely get more minutes. And he's probably sick of sitting on the bench. It's not like he hasn't earned a ton of money sitting on the bench already. He did that at Bayern Munich. I think he's probably quite keen to play some football now. And last year, it looked like he kind of still has it. He was at 0.6 expected goals and assists per 90. Which is very, very strong indeed. He had 14 goal contributions in under 1,700 league minutes, which is also extremely good. That was only bettered in the squad by Paco Alcácer, who, as we know, was just a super sub, really. Reus and Sancho. So these numbers are verging on elite, really. And over 2 chances created a game. So, look, I know he's been linked with clubs like Arsenal, as a replacement for Ozil. I think that's risky, but you could see why they might do it. But I think actually he'd probably be better off going for a club slightly less ambitious, or even an Italian club maybe. So, a team like Roma might be able to use him if they were to lose a star like Lorenzo Pellegrini, or maybe even an Atletico Madrid might take a gamble on him. It's not like he can't press. He pressed under Guardiola. He's pressed under Tuchel. He does know what he's doing. So, yeah, I think that there are actually quite a lot of landing places for Götze, and I think that the number of clubs who could afford his wages is now higher than it would ever have been in the past. You think about, Crystal Palace are paying Wilfried Zaha about the same money as Götze's looking for. And on a free, I think that that's not an unreasonable amount for him to ask. So, yeah, I would definitely be taking a look at Götze this summer.
Yeah, I think his position, the trouble with his position is a lot of teams have picked players up in that role. Like, I would have linked him to Inter Milan. I think we probably all would have linked him to Inter Milan pre-Christian Eriksen. And with Atletico Madrid, if they go for James in a slightly different direction, I think Götze might have to aim a little bit lower. I don't think Everton's the right destination for him because of Gylfi Sigurdsson in that hole at the moment. But maybe a sort of middling Premier League club might have to be the destination.
I think that's a really interesting shout, actually. I think Everton would probably fit him quite well because he's much more dynamic than Sigurdsson. And he's going to help in the press a little bit more. I think that sort of club, or even, a kind of versatile attacker for not much money, like clubs like Wolves, which don't have a huge amount of depth, might think about taking a look at him if they're not going to really spend any money this summer. Who knows? I think he's weirdly in quite a nice situation. I think he can afford to take a look around Europe, and even if he were to go to another German side and get more minutes, a Leverkusen an Eintracht Frankfurt or something, I think that he'd probably do pretty well.
Yeah, I was going to say Leverkusen. If Leverkusen lose Kai Havertz this summer, which I think they're probably going to, aren't they? If it's not to Bayern Munich, it will probably be to one of the English clubs. If they were to lose him, it's a little bit of a drop down, but I think it would equal minutes at least, and he would stay in Germany. He'd probably get paid a decent wage, and he'd probably get more game time than he would at an Everton or a Wolves. Hamill, who are you going to go for if not Mario Götze? Any other names spring to mind?
I mean, with Mario Götze, my thinking was fairly similar to yours, actually. I actually touted him for AC Milan in the How to Fix AC Milan video that we did on Euro Football Daily. He might be a little bit old for Ivan Gazidis' new recruitment policy at 27. Of course, they're trying to reduce the age sort of year on year. I think they're on about 26 at the moment, which is significantly younger than Juventus, but still not quite the youngest in the division. But yeah, I think Inter Milan, I think one of the sort of nouveau rich in the Premier League would be a really good destination. I do think he has 1 or 2 years left to offer, and what I don't want him to do is to take the payday at sort of an Inter Miami, because I think his ability is better than that. It should secure him a better move than America.
Hamster, what about if Leicester were to lose James Maddison? He didn't sign that contract extension at the King Power, and he ended up going to, let's say, a Man United or a Tottenham or somewhere like that. Do you think that Götze could fill the hole at Leicester?
I mean, that role is quite physically demanding. James Maddison does an awful lot of defending, actually, from the front, and he's shown himself to be a really willing and adept presser. So over the course of a season, there might be question marks whether Götze can sort of carry out those physical demands, but it's a similar sort of scenario to Philip Coutinho, I guess, isn't it? In that I'm a Leicester fan in regards to, what Premier League club do I support, and I would naturally get a little bit giddy to see a big name like that at Leicester. I don't think it'd be the worst replacement, but I'd certainly rather they go all guns blazing for Coutinho if James Maddison did move. But it still feels a little bit surreal to compare those sort of players when we're weighing up a move to Leicester. Just to go back to your earlier question, where you asked me about the sort of talent I've identified that's going on a free. I think it's someone that we've all spoke about in recent weeks on Football Daily, because he is probably the outstanding young talent that is available in the market, and there is a dearth of really top talent that's going on a free. A lot of actually a lot of big names in Serie A coming to the end of their career. Barely any freebies going in La Liga, but in Liga and Malang Sarr is perhaps a name that big teams have had on their radars for some years now. He's only 21 years of age. He's been capped by the under-21s. France's under-21s, that is. He's been a regular at Nice since the 16-17 campaign, when I think he made 25 starts. And he's racked up a further 94 appearances since, so he's got an awful lot of first-team football under his belt. He's a seasoned campaigner. Wasn't as prominent in 17-18 when Lucien Favre preferred Molan Santos and Dante, but he's bounced back since then. And despite Nice not having the best season defensively in 1920, I think they've conceded, or they did concede before the season was brought to an end, 38 goals, which was, I believe, put them in the bottom six, but it's still done enough, 18-19, to suggest that he could cut it at a bigger side. And those numbers looked, a little bit like this: 3.8 tackles and interceptions per 90. He was completing 70% of the tackles that he went in for, which are very similar numbers to the likes of Joe Gomez this season at Liverpool. In that 18-19 campaign, where he was a mainstay, Nice only conceded 35 goals, which was the joint second best in the division, along with PSG. So the numbers are a little bit more favourable than they are this season. However, XG does suggest they were fairly lucky and they should have conceded 40-something, but I'm guessing that's a legacy of Lucien Favre's time at the club, where he consistently outperformed the model, right? And that's a separate conversation for a separate time. But yeah, I think since Patrick Vieira's come in, he's been solid. He's a really adept passer as well. I think he's averaging around 60 passes this season with a 90.4% pass accuracy. It's not been below 89 in his entire time at Nice, which is sort of Virgil van Dijk at Liverpool levels. And I think he's hitting around 4 long balls a game as well. And Toby Alderweireld, who's normally my yardstick for this, is hitting around 4.6 this season, although has hit sort of 6, 7 in seasons gone by. So very convincing from a defensive standpoint, has lots of first team experience despite only being 21, and is really comfortable with the ball at his feet. He's been constantly linked with the likes of Gladbach and RB Leipzig, and that sort of makes sense to me, right? Especially if RB Leipzig lose the likes of Deo Upamecano for big money this summer or whenever it happens, Malang Sarr for free to replace him feels like outstanding business. I know you did a bit about Malang Sarr on the podcast, Pat. So is there any sort of nuances of his game that I've missed or that you think are worth flagging?
I mean, the fact that he's left-footed, I think, is like an incredibly big point in his favour. It's so hard to find left-footed centre-backs, and he's not that big. He's 6 foot, but he's pretty fast. And so if you play a back three where you're going to expect him to defend a lot in the wide areas, or if you've got an adventurous left back and so you're going to need that left-sided centre back to cover more space, I think he'd be an ideal fit. But I think the main thing, like you've said, is just the sheer amount of experience at such a young age. That is almost priceless. And as it turns out, it doesn't have a price this summer. You can get him for absolutely nothing. So yeah, I think there's almost nobody. I think there's almost no club too big to be thinking about this, because for nothing, why wouldn't you go for it?
Well, there's just a dearth of really high quality frees that I imagine there'll be multiple teams competing for his signature, particularly given the financial uncertainty that this season is causing, right? So he could get one hell of a payday if he plays his cards right.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I'll say that mine is at the other end of the spectrum, though. You've managed to find a young gem, I think, that is probably fairly rare in this summer. I totally agree with Pat. I think that the actual options are super limited of good free transfers this summer. But I do think that Willian still has a little bit to offer a fair few clubs in the Premier League. Look, he's not a player that is going to improve now, and he's probably going to cost a little bit on the wage front, but I do still think he's got plenty to offer. 10 goal involvements this season in 21 starts, not too bad. I think he's got the third best expected goals and assists in the entire Chelsea squad, which says something. Chelsea offered him a 2-year contract, of course, that he declined, which I found rather interesting because he's after a 3-year deal. Now, I can totally understand Chelsea's rationale of not offering him that 3-year deal, and I'm, to be honest with you, a little bit surprised that they offered him a 2-year deal, if those reports are to be believed, given the wide talent they've got at the club in, Callum Hudson-Odoi, Christian Pulisic, they've got Hakim Ziyech joining as well. So I'm a little bit surprised that they even went to offer him a 2-year deal. But if he does leave for a free, he'd be a decent pickup for a lot of Premier League teams, given his wealth of experience. I still think that he has stuff to offer going forward. In and around the box. So I would like to see Everton potentially utilise somebody like Willian.
Are you on the payroll at Everton?
I'm not, but I should be, to be quite honest. I should be. I think that he'd be a good addition to someone like them. Obviously, he's heavily linked with Tottenham Hotspur, isn't he? And I think that was probably where he'll end up if he doesn't sign a new contract. I think Jose Mourinho's been desperate to take him wherever he's gone, and will probably take him to Tottenham Hotspur. In terms of just adding another forward option. I don't know what you boys think about Willian at Tottenham, but I think it's an all right move. It's fine. It's decent enough cover for free.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's pretty solid, isn't he? I think he's quite low risk if you can get him in on reasonable wages and you don't have to commit to him for 3 seasons, which does seem like an excessive ask at, 31? I think his numbers haven't really bottomed out, which is quite promising if you were thinking about taking that gamble, I guess. I think his shots, key passes and dribbles are all on 2.4 per 90 this season. So while he is sort of deteriorating, it's quite slow. So you're probably still going to get another 1-2 years of decent performances out of him. So again, it might just be that a sort of middling club with bigger aspirations comes in and pays him a fair whack, and and hopefully he can help them make that that transition. And we're going back to the Evertons, we're going back to the Wolves here. So yeah, I think you're right, mate. He's fairly solid, but I don't think a top team are going to give him 3 years.
Definitely not going to give him 3 years. I think this is actually his second best season at Chelsea, to be honest. I think 17-18 was his best when he had 13 goals in 36 appearances. But other than that, I think this might be one of his most potent seasons. So I'm look, do you remember the game against Tottenham Hotspur this season, for example? He was the best player on the pitch by an absolute mile. And I think that that's the sort of game that Tottenham will look at and go, you know what, if we can get 5 of them out of him a season, it might be worth taking him on a free and just paying him the wages. I don't think they're interested in a regular player who's going to play 30, 90s a season. I think they'll just probably look for somebody who is a bit of depth going forward. They've had a lot of injury problems in the forward areas. They've had Son with his arm injury, and Harry Kane, we know about how many injuries he's had, meaning Moura's had to play a little bit further forward. They've got Bergwijn through the door. So maybe one more attacker and just a bit of squad depth at Tottenham, because I think the actual rest of the free transfer options are pretty poor. Jan Vertonghen, I suppose, going on a free might interest some other clubs. I wonder whether he might go back to Ajax. I don't know whether or not they would want to pay those wages, but I've seen that sort of move happen before. But the rest of the list, to be honest with you, comparatively compared to normal, is pretty poor. Ryan Fraser, I know he's linked with Arsenal. Pato, any interest?
No, not really. I mean, I think he'd be lucky to get a move to a club in the category just below Arsenal, to be honest with you. I mean, it's the kind of thing where maybe like a Sheffield United takes a flyer on him or something, who are probably going to be a solid mid-table side. Like that, I could see that happening. But I kind of agree. I think the options are pretty dreadful, to be honest. To me, the value this summer is going to be much more with cheap buyout clauses or players whose contracts end next season. There are loads of players whose contracts come to an end in 2021, and so their price will be a little bit lower, and I would probably be looking at some of those. Like, do you want Vertonghen, who's got a lot of injury problems and an extremely high wage but is going for a free, versus say somebody like Willy Bolly, who's substantially younger and has only a year left on his contract? You could probably get him for very little. I think financially it probably works out about the same, and one of them might be a more sensible long-term bet than the other.
Yeah, there's a couple other names in there worth mentioning. I suppose we've linked Meunier to a few places before, haven't we? We've said that he'd be an all-right pickup for somebody. I'm sure that's probably still the case. Kazar was also going on a free. Cavani, is his contract up this summer? I've got him written down in the list. If he is, then the trouble with him is the wages, isn't it? He's going to be on absolutely huge money. So I don't think that many Premier League clubs will be interested in him.
I think Inter Miami beckons for Cavani. There's actually some younger, slightly more interesting talent available from the likes of PSG and in Ligue 1, like Kouassi, like Walter Benitez. So they're probably worth a gamble. I mean, RB Leipzig have done well picking up the likes of Nkunku and sort of other players like Odsonne Edouard have gone to Celtic for that sort of £8-9 million region, which is what those players are valued at current. So it might be worth just doubling down on their potential, if not their sort of first team output at the moment, rather than an older name on that list.
All right, so we're going for our free transfers that we think would be good pickups. Willian, Mario Götze and Malang Sarr. I think Malang Sarr is probably the outstanding name on there, isn't he? He's probably the only outstanding free transfer really for a decent club. Let's go to quickfire questions though. This one from Finna Höftok, terrible pronunciation. He says, which team should sign Isco this summer? Is Isco going to leave Real Madrid? I feel like he's never going to leave and he's just going to finish his career on the bench there.
Nobody should sign Isco this summer. Nobody's got any money. Isco's going to cost a lot. James Rodriguez probably be cheaper and has always been much better. Lorenzo Pellegrini will be cheaper and is better right now. I mean, Isco's a great player, but it's hard to find a home for that sort of guy. He's not going to defend as hard as James. He's not going to do as much ball progression as someone like Pellegrini. I just think there's actually a lot of younger attacking midfielders around right now. And Isco is going to struggle to find a home. So, yeah, I don't think anyone will buy him. But I think a lot of players like him, like Kai Havertz or whatever, I think they might have to wait a season to get a move just because everyone's going to be tightening their belts.
Yeah, totally agree. I think he's been linked heavily with Manchester City in the British tabloids, but it just feels like that sort of journalism where it's like, oh, he's like that sort of player. Where I don't think Man City are going to be signing an attacking midfielder now. I don't even know whether David Silva's still going to leave after this crisis, so I wouldn't expect that one to happen. Ben Mart says, this season's poor performing signings, you back to have a great comeback season, Hamster. Any names spring to mind?
Oh, this is actually a great question that I've not given much thought. A name that springs to mind straight away is Ismail Assar, who didn't necessarily start that well at Watford and then has come on really strongly in the middle third of the season. I do think football fans are getting increasingly, impatient with players and not really acknowledging that, some need a year to adapt to the culture, particularly young players. Has there been any cases of that at Manchester United recently, Tomlinson? Like, I know Bruno Fernandes has adapted pretty quickly, but Fred might be a good answer for this question.
Yeah, I mean, Fred, this is not his first season though, so I guess it doesn't really count. I would say Seb Allaire, potentially, if they got the right manager in. I do still think Seb Allaire has something to offer a Premier League side.
Joe Linton, maybe.
I think Seb Allaire more than Joe Linton.
Okay, fair enough.
I think Seb Allaire in that West Ham side, and there are some good players in that West Ham side. I think with the right central midfield additions and the right manager, they could actually do pretty well. But I just don't think the setup suits Seb Allaire at the moment. In particular, the players that are giving him the ball effectively. I don't think they've used Lanzini particularly well. Pablo Fornals has been invisible there pretty much all season. Felipe Anderson hasn't had a good year, but they're still decent standard players.
Felipe Anderson is a big one there, isn't he? He spent a lot of time this season out injured, right? And Seb Allaire's service did suffer big time as a result, as did West Ham's ability to get into the final third. So I think that is a good shout. Particularly when you look at his numbers at Eintracht Frankfurt. He was not just a decent finisher, but an outstanding creator as well. It wasn't just that he did one thing well. He did a couple of things really, really well. So yeah, I actually agree with you. I'll back him over Joel Linton. But if Joel Linton was in a side that could retain, more than 40% possession, or a side like Getafe who didn't care about possession but just created really high quality chances, then he might do all right. But under Bruce Ball, it doesn't seem to be fair in that world, does it?
I think as well, Eden Hazard probably will have a better comeback season in his second campaign at Bernabeu. I would be surprised to see him have another season of struggles. Maybe Eder Militao as well, if he manages to finally get some minutes there, which I feel like is just never going to happen, is it? Behind Ramos and Varane, but if he somehow gets in there, then potentially, and maybe Christian Pulisic had a good season in terms of immediate impact, in terms of like short numbers, but he hasn't put up the minutes I was expecting him to put up. I was expecting him to be a regular first team contributor every single week in, week out under Frank Lampard, and he's not through just his own fault. Obviously, Frank's gone in a different direction at times, but I think maybe he'll be a little bit disappointed with the minutes he's put up this season.
Moving on then to personal questions. This one was sent in by Rob Welch 2000. He says, what is your go-to lockdown home-cooked meal? Oh, Pato, we know you're a bit of a chef, or you fancy yourself as a bit of a chef. Never actually seen the product, but heard plenty about it. What are you cooking up?
I don't know if we have a go-to, but we've had a lot of udon. Like, we've had a lot of udon since we've been home. Udon noodles, they're like a thick type of noodle. So we've had lots of different kinds of udon, I guess. That's probably the main thing. Like, we've had loads of eggs. It's just things that are kind of easy to cook that we have around the house. So like quite a lot of pasta, quite a lot of rice, quite a lot of udon, and a bunch of eggs. But we've also been baking a lot. Like Emma made sourdough last week. This weekend, I made pizza a few weeks ago, so I'm going to make pizza again this weekend. I got like some good
toppings?
Good tomatoes in and stuff. It depends. Like, I mean, that week I made it was like chorizo crisps and ricotta, mozzarella, and tomato. And we also made one that was like a white pizza base with jalapeno jam, which was pretty good. This weekend, I'm going to do a simple kind of pomodoro, I think, with like, we got these like fancy San Marzano tomatoes and some basil and stuff. But generally speaking, far too much cheese. So much cheese that it turns into like a little lake. That's my... That's the, you know when you go to a place and there's a fancy pizza and they're like, you only need 3 basil leaves and like 2 bits of mozzarella. But you should put the whole ball of mozzarella on it, in my opinion.
You're wrong, mate. That's wrong.
What,
Less
cheese on pizza?
Don't like too much cheese on pizza. Just a bit of splattering at most.
God, you're literally the blandest man.
Nah, don't say that, but just because I don't like my cheese.
Like, just put some salt on it. Put a bit of salt on it and a tomato, and I'm good.
Isn't white pizza base Doogie's rapper name as well? I feel like that would be pretty apt, to be honest.
I always assumed it was Dragon Master, right? But yeah, I'm not sure. What have you guys got as your as your lockdown home cooked meal? I mean, to be honest, Emma does most of the cooking. Like, she's a much better chef than I am. So,
mate, get yourself down Tesco. 2 eat for a tenner is absolutely fantastic. Tesco Express, the value unrivaled. You don't get the chips. You obviously get the dauphinoise potatoes as the side. You get a starter as well, actually. What do we normally get for the starter? No response. Interesting.
So rude that was, by the way.
Oh, no, we don't get starter. We get pudding. Key lime pie. Key lime pie, dauphinoise potatoes, and maybe some lamb. That's nice.
A nice lamb shank.
Yeah, because even if it doesn't cook that well or it's a bit gristly, just sling some mint sauce on it. Love a bit of mint sauce. That sharpness just cuts through. Coat it on there. And then you get a drink as well. Normally a cheap wine gets guzzled for a £5, just to make my company more bearable for Lauren.
Mine is a sausage, bacon, tomato and chili gnocchi with basil. It's really nice.
How much sausage and bacon do you eat?
I love it. I had a sausage and bacon sandwich for lunch today. I've had eight sausages last 2 days.
To be honest, like, gnocchi is often a less is more food, but if you give me sausage, bacon, and chili on it, it's gonna be amazing.
Yeah, you'll like it. I promise you, it's really nice.
How can you not? Every ingredient is delicious.
Bit of paprika in there, hot paprika from Budapest. Oh, it's lovely.
Oh, that does sound great.
It is really nice. Right, who's got something to plug then? Because we better go before Hamill's phone overheats for a 15th time.
Yeah. Wow, it's been a struggle, hasn't it? Okay, let's just get in and out then. So, the Extra Time podcast. We've got a brand new show out on Eurofootball Daily now, actually, called The Football Pyramid, devised by White Pizza Base himself, Doogie Critchley. So please go and watch that, because coming up with a new show in lockdown, never easy. So he's done well. Anything else?
I love that you say never easy, like it's a thing that's happened before. All the other times.
Yeah, that is very true.
All right, that's it then. Unless you got anything, Pat.
There's always the podcast. You can listen or watch the podcast. Do that.
There we go. Right, thanks very much for watching, everybody. Stay safe. Bye-bye.